working at your peak performance every day in your work and your life. In today's episode of the Real Life Planning Podcast, I'm here with Melanie Curtis, who was a world record pro skydiver and a peak performance coach. We're going to hear all about how she made this interesting transition in her career and how she uses her life experience to help people optimize and maximize the result that they get every day. Melanie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm laughing because I'm always like, oh God, it sounds almost daunting, this idea of like peak performance all the time, optimal results. But for me, I'm a person that's really genuinely interested in the expansiveness of my human experience. And so I actually really like and I'm very curious about what it takes to expand myself, to grow and be in that experience with other folks. So that's why my career, my life experience has led me to those types of things.
People that listen or watch this video podcast, we're all real estate entrepreneurs. Many of us are building and scaling a real estate business on the side with the idea that of being work optional at a younger than typical retirement age, like in your mid 40s or 50s, sometimes younger. And that often includes other kinds of entrepreneurship. And that's a lot to juggle, building your career while also building a real estate business. And so I'm personally interested in this. I think a lot of our clients are really interested in this topic because they're trying to get the right things done in the time that they have available in the day.
Yeah. And it's hard to know, right? So part of, I think, being an entrepreneur is simply acknowledging how scary it can be sometimes. Like we are leaping into the proverbial unknown as an entrepreneur. We don't know if we'll be able to do it. We don't know if it'll work. We don't know if people will buy from us. We don't know if people will work with us. We don't know if we'll like the thing we're going to try to do that we think we might like as a secondary or tertiary income stream or even primary income stream, right? So that's something to, I think, really validate for ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Like really validate that so that we can have our humanity such that doing something like entrepreneurship and growth and stretching into our comfort zone is actually something sustainable. Because if we don't, we're just going to be pressed down by the difficulty of fear, discomfort, and all that comes with being a business owner. Because I'm a business owner as well. I've been an entrepreneur about 20 years. And I joke that I think I'm too far gone. I don't think I could ever go back to having a boss or having someone kind of tell me what to do. But I also know from my experience as a coach and just being in community and masterminds, being in connection with other entrepreneurs over the years, that it's not for everyone because it is a really mentally and emotionally rigorous game.
We really want to know what's important to know about you and tell us a bit about your background because it's really interesting in my opinion.
Thanks. Yeah, the world record pro skydiving thing is really this sort of sexy, weird door opener for me as a keynote speaker. So I'm a keynote speaker, like you said, I'm a coach as well. And I am a pro skydiver, but I skydive much less than I used to. I'm very selective about the work that I do in skydiving now because I honestly have simply done it and I want to do other things with my life experience, with my life force. But at the same time, it does open interesting, unique doors for me. So if there is a project that calls to me, that is of interest to me, then I will do it. Now, the world record that I talk about in a lot of my keynote speaking, we did that in 2022. And I'll just give you a brief understanding of what it is. It just is concise so people can have a sense for what's a world record. Is it like the fastest? Is it like, what does that mean? This particular world record was 100 women jumping out of 5 different aircraft flying in formation, all at 20,000 feet. We're breathing supplemental oxygen. We're coming out of the airplanes. We're converging, flying together to a predetermined formation, all going upside down at 200 miles per hour. So it is a ridiculous, insane environment. And so it's just this really powerful vehicle to talk about fear, to talk about how we move through discomfort, to talk about building skills around mental and emotional resilience, to talk about how and what our autopilot habits might be to keep us from being able to reach the further reaches of our potential. And then what goes into amplifying, how do we actually show up? Because like a world record, again, it's not one jump and we do a record. It's 5 to 6 jumps a day for 5 full days. Now, even getting invited on a record, you've already done years and so much to build skills to be like to have physical skills to be invited on a record like that. So already we have the peak of the peak performers in our sport. And what ends up separating people from whether they end up on the final record or not is their mental and emotional game. And I talk a lot about fear and I talk a lot about discomfort as well as being an avenue because again, what blocks us from our potential, a lot of it is avoiding discomfort. And there's a big conversation around that as well, but I don't know where else do you want to take it? I'll give you a pause.
I think you're so right about that, and whether this makes it into the final recording or not, we'll see. But the whole idea and some of the coach training that I've had from 2 different, like from the Coaches Training Institute and from the Life Coach School, the idea is that feelings drive action, and consequently, people do a lot to avoid a feeling.
Yeah,
But a
absolutely.
feeling isn't a fact.
Correct. Yeah, that's one of the things I talk about fear, is that fear can be very convincing. It can speak with a really strong certainty, and so often it's wrong. So often fear is, even though the world record, this is an example that I tend to use sometimes, is even with 30 years experience, I have 12,000 skydives. I am very experienced doing this particular thing. Even still, the entirety leading up to it, the entirety during it, fear was telling me, don't do this. You'll be humiliated. You'll look stupid. You're not good enough. You'll die. Like all kinds of things that are simply not true. Now, the mortal danger part of the skydiving conversation versus modern life is, of course, there. But that's something to consider, is that fear feels like it has a mortal danger even when it doesn't. So, of course, as entrepreneurs, as people who are trying to make a sale, we have a new client, we need another deal for the month to make sure we can pay our mortgage or put food on the table. Those are very real fears connected to survival, scarcity, those types of things. Even though, so like to honor fear and to basically honor it, but also acknowledge its power, and also then still not listen to it. So if we listen and we trust that be right all the time, we're going to be very, very limited in our life experience.
We have to let our brains decide if we're going to do something or not based on more than just the feeling of fear.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are our values? What is it that we think is the next best action? And this is when we start to bring in things like intuition. I knew I was retired from these world records. The last world record I had done was in 2013. Like I was not, these are really scary, super intense, not the safest environment. Like it's not something I was much interested in doing again. But the reason that I did is that this particular record was in service to women and girls. It was supported by philanthropy, and it gave us this expanded opportunity to use skydiving as a vehicle to champion women to be bold and brave in the world, which is something I care quite deeply about. And we had we had a PR team. We were able to do big interviews on CBS Evening News and the Good Morning, like all kinds of different shows and media outlets, which is that in itself was this beautiful opportunity to amplify reach, experience, to be connected to a sort of deeper purpose that mattered. Now, that's the reason for me why I decided to come out of retirement and be a part of this record. But relative to fear trying to stop me from doing it, my intuition, every time I checked in with my intuition, every time, it told me that this particular experience was special enough that I really saw the continuation and the amplification of my keynote speaking career. And that has happened. That has happened. But only because I went to go to stillness, pause beneath the noise of fear. And what is my intuition really telling me in this moment? And then take the next smallest step possible through that thing, which some days was just walking toward the airplane, putting my helmet on, putting my seatbelt on. It could be as small as that to work through those really intense fears to keep us going in the direction that we know is right for us.
When that technique that you used with the other women in your skydiving group, that you used to achieve this powerful goal, how do you translate that when you work with professionals and business owners?
Yeah. I always say this a lot with clients. I could talk all day long about the general nature of life coaching or coaching in general. And that's fine. It's cool. We'll talk about it. But really, the power and the oomph of coaching and that experience comes in the details of a person's life. So, what I would say to those people, not to say, oh, everyone has to get a coach, but it's really about the details of this self-reflection. Oftentimes, this is easier to do in safe containers, like a coach, like a trusted advisor, like a personal or professional board of directors. Who in your life can you have a reflective, honest conversation such that you can see things that your autopilot brain, your typical way of thinking and operating, misses. So we need to take those steps back from how we typically operate. So that's the first thing I would suggest. And a coach is just really that's a professional that is trained to hold that kind of space. That's the only reason why I point to that.
To hold that space and to ask a really powerful question.
Yep.
And again, the person that's being coached to access.
Correct.
Their own
And expand, pull on the threads of the things that the person shares. So we could do that journaling, which again, this sounds hokey. Oh God, journaling, another hashtag life coach suggestion, but really players, like the best of the best. I'm not joking. I work with a lot of really intense folks because not everybody resonates with my intensity, but people who are really driven and want to go big tend to resonate with me. And those things, when we drop the judgment around certain behaviors, things that we feel certain are not for us, might be a door to what we haven't accessed yet. Not always, but it's something to consider.
So let's dig into that a little bit. You talk about how you think so many of us have massive untapped potential. Tell me more what you mean by that and how you help folks. What are the exercises or the signposts that you would use to help somebody tap into their potential, especially if they feel, oh, I think I was meant for something bigger?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of briefly already touched on this, but one thing I talk about a lot is cultivating a support team, a version of your support system. Because when we are going past what we are currently aware that we are capable of, we're in the unknown. We're in the discomfort and the scariness of that expansion. And so inevitably, we're going to screw it up. We're going to fall on our metaphorical face. Our fear is going to ramp up when we screw something up. It's like we're going to have experiences where we then really need support. Otherwise, it's very easy to stop. But the other thing I also point to relative to we all have massive untapped potential is everything that we do that we think we cannot do. So anything that we self-select into or life delivers us like a kick in the teeth, or we choose into something that's hard, that we're uncertain we'll be able to finish or make it through. When we do those things, we slowly, creak open those heavy doors of limiting thinking on our own mind. And it's proof to us that we can do more, always do more than we currently think. So even me today, at my level of thinking, where I'm at with all my experiences, yada, 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 I believe there's more that I can access. Not that I have to, not that I'm not good enough as I am here. That's a different version of cultivating self-worth, but more to say, if I want to, I can. If I want to, I get to. And it just depends on how I self-select into that. You know what I'm saying? So that's it. Those are concepts I invite clients into, and then we dig in about what the specificity is around for each person.
Let's take the sort of typical person that we work with at Real Life Planning, who is successful in their career or their business. They're building multiple sources of income, right? So they're buying rental properties or loaning money or that sort of thing. And they may be buying other businesses and being more of the owner and less of the operator. And their driving force is they're looking for time freedom.
Yep.
But now with all the things, they feel a little bit time constrained.
Yeah.
How would you coach somebody like that?
Yeah, time constrained. I would validate it first. I would acknowledge it as evidence of their growth, because I imagine before they probably were not time constrained because they were not succeeding at the level that they currently are, such that they are now time constrained. So I would first acknowledge that. I would celebrate that growth. And then I would ask about, okay, so what's happening? What literally is occurring? What is your day-to-day experience like? What are you spending your time on? And then I would get into what drains your energy and what brings you energy. What is your financial availability and runway such that we could outsource or hire someone? Have you had experience in hiring folks and bringing folks on a team? Is that something you even want to do? We would really dig into what they might want the next chapter or the next echelon of their business to look and feel like. Because, for example, as a coach, you might have a similar experience. I've known from the beginning, and I've checked in with myself over time as I've grown over the last 20 years, is that I've never wanted to hire other coaches and have a team of coaches. That's just never been something I wanted to do. I'm really connected personally to my value of freedom and this growth, like my creative spirit. I like to have space to do those things. And I don't like managing people very much, to be honest. I've done it. I don't really enjoy it. So it's something I've chosen for myself as not a piece of my work life. But some people are like, yeah, I love the idea of having a great team and really sharing a business growth experience. So it just depends on the person. So that's where I would go with the conversation. But then I would really get into the nuts and bolts of, okay, what are the next accountable actions? So what is it that we need to either learn more about, explore, and or actually do because we are clear it's the next action, and then really hold people accountable to taking those steps that they wouldn't do if they didn't have support to do it with accountability.
Do you find that people have to be able to envision in their mind's eye of themselves having achieved a goal in order to be able to take those small steps? I often find that people have to think it's possible.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. One of the things I recommend a lot to just anybody, whether I'm working with them or not, just a person that's interested in this type of expansion, entrepreneurially, personally, professionally, whatever, is to listen to podcasts, audible books. Fill your mind with stories of people doing not necessarily exactly what you want to do or think you want to do or exactly in your lane of industry, but people who are driven in the same ways that you, in similar ways that you are. Because the more you hear those stories, the more you hear the humanity in someone like Jim Collins or Sarah Blakely or Jesse Itzler or Oprah or whatever, Brene, Tim Ferriss. There are countless stories, Ray Dalio, amazing content out there that can help us not have to have all the experience ourselves. We can go, whoa, if they felt like that and that was how they flailed on their path. And I'm over here kind of flailing because I'm a human, because being a human is hard and who knows what they're doing ever? Nobody. So it's like that. When we can invite ourselves into the gentleness of our humanity, we can actually be more powerful because we're less held back by worries around, am I doing it right? Will I be able to do it? We'll be more comfortable with the idea of failing along the way and that being part of the growth as well.
Behind every successful person, as we know, there's a lot of stumbles and things that didn't work out. And
Yep.
so we can't compare our start to somebody else's finish.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And that can happen a lot, which is why I invite people into the like sort of depth of getting connected to these other stories and also practicing to back to a very pragmatic thing. It seems like an unpracticable thing, these emotional mental skills, but really committing to a practice of cultivating the skill of self-validation, like really learning how to validate and like share with yourself how understandable and normal it is for you to be having whatever challenge you're having, to be feeling the fear or the upset that you're feeling, to be attached to a certain specific outcome because you care for whatever reasons. All those things matter along the path. Otherwise, it's just too hard. It's not sustainable if we don't have that sort of emotional resilience and support system inside ourselves as well.
We're in Western culture, particularly in North America, we're all taught to be consumers, but now we're really in a creator economy where for very little capital investment, somebody can take these cool ideas that they have and create something and get it out to somebody who wants to buy it, no matter how much of a niche or specialty it is. And so there's a huge opportunity here. But we're in a transition where people aren't sure if they can think of themselves as a creator and not a consumer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. How much I talk to folks about I laugh because the way that I talk about this, it's a multitude of things. First, on the positive side of the house, for any entrepreneur, not everybody loves him or likes him. But I've been a fan of Gary Vee for a long time as an entrepreneur. He is big on the profanity. So if you're not a person into profanity, don't follow him. But I bring him up because his opinions.
I'm in New Jersey.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. I have a whole story about the first time I said the F word, and it's hilarious. Anyway, but Gary Vee, why I bring him up is that he's a big proponent of really helping people get the amount of opportunity that exists in the current world. Now, that then calls us into an experience of putting ourselves out there, right? Maybe it involves us holding up a cell phone to our face and talking it into it and creating some version of public content or trying to add value through our own voice, through our own presence, personal brand, whatever you might create. And that experience can be really daunting for a lot of people. And what I'll say about that is I joke that I've cauterized my soul over the last multiple decades, just like relentlessly doing that. Meaning just again, checking in with my intuition, feeling this sort of deeper knowing that part of my calling on this earth, my mission as a human, whatever you want to say, is to be in service in this form, to be seen, to use my voice, to take up space in the world. That type of stuff matters to me. It may not matter to everyone. So it's not that everyone needs to be a personal brand. But for those
you can create other things, a product for people or a service. You can create something that solves a problem. Maybe it solves a problem for yourself. And likely story, right? It solves a problem for yourself. And then you go out and take it to the world.
Totally. Yeah. And so anyway, that is rife with the challenges of putting ourselves out there. So it goes back to what we've talked about already is the specificity of that opportunity, that option for people is going to elicit feelings, fears, discomfort. Something will come up. You will have some thought around it. You might be excited. Heck yeah, I want to do it. At some point, you're going to likely meet up with some kind of resistance or challenge. And so those are the moments we need to be more prepared for. Like, it's easy when it's easy. It's not easy when it's hard. Duh. I'm not saying anything that's like rocket science here, but when we don't prepare and we don't really like respect the difficulty and want to be in the difficulty and want to learn how to like more expertly move through the difficulty, that's when we can level up, is when we do those things.
This is what I tell my two younger kids who are 17 and 21, that first of all, let the human experience has both good and bad in it. And that we want to take lessons from the difficult things. And sometimes many years from now, you will look back on that difficult thing and see it as a blessing. Not always.
Right.
It depends what kind of difficulty it is, obviously, but that just trying to look at life like an obstacle course, right? And the more you move through them, the stronger you get. And there's so much fear in their generation right now because the economy is changing rapidly. Social media is a quagmire. Our kids aren't necessarily watching. The algorithm is feeding you and me, right? It's feeding us all sorts of positive inspiration because that's what we're watching and listening to. If somebody clicks on something that's negative, they can go down this rabbit hole of rage baiting and conflict entrepreneurship. Right?
Yep. Yeah, totally. Yeah, God, the landscape of the world is rough out there these days. But I really am a big proponent of having boundaries in all ways that we might need, whether it's in our relationships with the people around us, who we choose to be around. Jim Rohn quote, it's a very famous quote, you're like the 5 people you spend the most time with, that type of thing. So to really be mindful about who you spend the most time with. Who are those people? What energy do they bring? What values do they hold? Because they are influencing you, even if you think they are not. And that certainly applies to social media and the content we consume. It's just like food. If we're eating ice cream cones for the only thing that we eat, we're not going to probably be healthy. So if we're just consuming in our mind just crap social media, and listen, I watch enough cat reels and dumb,
you baby.
So, like
French recipes. I watch this.
Like I eat some ice cream, but it's not every meal. It's not the only thing I consume. So bringing some intentionality to that. It's another thing that I talk a lot about, is intentionality as an amplifier, because autopilot, like the conversation around habits can build in a sort of negative sense, and we can build them in a positive sense, which again, this is not easy stuff. A book I highly recommend people read is Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit. I think that's the foundational resource to understand habits and then be empowered into the fact that we can change them, even though it's difficult most times.
That is a great book. I love that book. And Atomic Habits, too.
Yeah, James Clear, Atomic Habits. Yeah. I think Power of Habit first, and then follow it up with Atomic Habits by James Clear. Both are excellent. I agree. But yeah, it can be really disempowering when we have this sort of identification of self. That's just not me. Or we've tried to change something and we weren't able to, or we had a hard time, or the bad habit came back or something like that. It's totally normal. And to be discouraged at that, to feel deflated when that happens, and also to get into this place of, I'll never be able to change this in my life and my life experience. That's a really tough mental, emotional place to be. So when we start to understand habits and like what it actually takes to make bigger changes, like foundational neural pathway changes, we can start to be empowered in a different way into real and true different version of ourselves and different life experience as a result.
Hey, what's next for your business now? You're a keynote speaker. Are you doing a lot of traveling? Is there a book in the works? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a keynote speaker and I certainly do coach, but I focus primarily when I share publicly. I'm out there entirely as a
Mhm.
speaker these days, just because that's the arm of my business I'm building. And so, yeah, I'm doing like the opening keynote for the New Jersey Conference of Women. I'm excited. 700 people in the audience. I'm like, okay, how many of them do I need to imagine are naked to feel chill? But no, I'm just kidding. It's like, I'm excited about this growth. It's something I've been working on for a while. I've been a speaker for a long time, but never really focused on it as the primary thing until
Mhm.
recent years. And it's exciting to see it start to really blossom and start to get gigs and just really have all of the back end systems supporting it. It's cool. I have books already. I've written 3 books over the course of the years, but the main book that people often like to read is How to Fly: Life Lessons from a Professional Skydiver. It's a 13-hour listen on Audible, but relatively entertaining.
That's excellent. Excellent. What I love about what you're doing is you're leveraging your own time to reach more people by being a big stage speaker.
Yeah.
That's a one-to-many activity, right?
Yeah.
And as you've honed your ideas through decades of practice, now you can share them in a really concise and compelling way with
Yeah.
people in various audiences. And that's effective and efficient.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's really, for me, the next level of impact. I say that like impact is baked into everything that I do. So I don't
Mhm.
necessarily always need to talk about it. Like why I'm standing on a stage is, yeah, it's certainly to expand my business and
Mhm.
my revenue streams and whatnot, and being fully financially free and abundant. And all those things are very true. And it's to be with the people that are there and to hopefully make a positive difference for them and to be like, okay, skydiving maybe is not relatable, but the concepts embedded in the things that we've done at these sort of expanded peak levels are really interesting to a lot of folks and really inspiring to a lot of folks. And so I'm glad and I'm grateful that I get to be in service in that kind of way.
So you talked about being able to hear other stories from folks who've been successful in different ways about where they struggled or where they fell down or failed. What's something that you could share with us from your own life or professional experience that didn't work out? And what were your takeaways from it?
Yeah, gosh, how many? There's so many. I'm like, it's like you've been in business long enough. You're like, oh my God. One of the early stories, this is financially based, so I'll share this one, and this is when I was a young person. I worked at an investment bank for 5 years out of college. I made a lot of money and I spent it all getting good at skydiving because that was my real passion as a young person. I was very driven, obsessed, almost like very unstoppably focused on being involved in skydiving as a competitor. And then that led the way to me growing as the person and professional and celebrity, as it were, in skydiving that I am
It
now, which
sounds
I,
expensive, though. Am I right about that?
yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah,
like more expensive than horseback riding and figure
yeah,
skating and
yeah.
hockey. And yeah,
Lots of gear,
yeah.
lots of skydives, lots of traveling to the drop zone, lots of getting coaching, lots of flying in the wind tunnel, just lots and lots of training over the years. So anyway, I spent all that money getting good and I was able to turn pro as at 26 years old, which was amazing. So this is oh my God, how could I possibly how could my life possibly include this? This is an early example of me having a life experience that challenged the limits of my thinking to be like, I couldn't even have thought this up as part of my career. But the challenge was that I also didn't understand how to own my financial worth back then. So I went from making a lot of money in an investment banking job and then making peanuts as a pro skydiver, which I was willing and happy to do because it was one of those things where it was my dream that I didn't even know was possible. So I was willing to do anything. But that can be risky, right? So fast forward multiple years later, and I'm still making peanuts because I never knew and I was afraid and I didn't know how to advocate for myself financially. So I finally, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, finally was like, yo,
People I don't need to show up to do this for free.
and just to say, I grew the events of this particular place, the skydiving center that I was working with, and just like really did incredible work that really benefited this particular business that I was working with. I knew that and I saw that. So that growth point of really wanting to share this story so that other people who might just not even have thought to advocate for themselves financially, to ask for a raise, to step into a conversation with the quote unquote powers that be at their work or whatever. And again, this is entrepreneurially, this can look like raising your rates and how much does that, what feels comfortable, what feels uncomfortable but exciting, what feels too far, just getting in this conversation with ourselves about actual dollars and cents worth. And so anyway, long story short, I finally get into this conversation with my bosses at the time, and they agree to basically double my salary. And the learning about it is not that they did that and my salary was doubled, but it was also like there was embedded in this story, there was some toxic leadership issues that I was ready to leave from anyway. So that bump in pay, I only actually made for like less than a year. And then I left to become a complete and full entrepreneur and a full-time professional athlete. And so that's what led to my part of my career where I was traveling and getting hired at events around the world. But I was all in charge of myself at that point. But I easily could have advocated for my worth sooner had I known and had I even thought about it and been willing to be braver sooner.
What a great story. Melanie, what are you curious about right now?
I'm always curious about human consciousness and the expansiveness of our experience, which sounds weird and dumb, but I really am. That is partly why I'm so like alive for my work. But I'm also, this is hilarious. I recently moved and I'm putting my home together. I have this commitment to basically, as much as I possibly can, buy nothing retail. Like anything that I need, I'm going to try to buy it through like a Facebook marketplace or like really try to see what I can source through other avenues other than retail purchasing and just see what that experience is like. Not that I can't buy retail, but that's been delighting me recently because it's not something I've done before.
Or environmentally conscious and respectful of, sometimes I see in my own neighborhood, sometimes people throw things away that they might spend $5,000 or $10,000 on.
Exactly. I just got a couple of amazing, like beautiful glass coffee table, like a coffee table and an end table yesterday from this guy who his wife and he are moving to Sydney, Australia. They had their giant mansion and they're just, and again, these tables are beautiful. They're these very special pieces and I got them for $100. I got to drive through fall foliage for an hour and a half to go pick them up. It was a great break from my work. So that type of thing.
It's been such a delight to talk to you today. And I look forward to seeing you in action in real life on the stage.
Thank you.
Tell us where we can find you online.
Yeah, Cynthia, I agree. It has been a delight. Thank you for having me. People can find me at melaniecurtis.com. I always welcome people to reach out to me directly, mel@melaniecurtis.com, or Instagram is a good place to follow me, Melanie Curtis 11. It's a Spinal Tap reference for anyone likes that. I'm a jokester. I go to 11. Ha. And then LinkedIn, for sure. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Those are my two socials. And I'm so grateful. Thank you for having me.